All right, so hopefully everyone can see that okay. Right? If you can't see this or you can't hear me clearly or anything, again, just make sure you mention or ask questions in the chat, because that is my main source of being able to see what's going on since I can't hear or see you. But again, if you have gone to some of the social studies classes, great. If you haven't, that's totally fine. All of this stuff will be, hopefully you get something. All right, so I've kind of gone through an old GED test and just pulled out some government and civics type of questions. And so we're just going to kind of skip around the test and essentially, look at the types of civics and government questions you might see. So questions 5, 6, and 7 we're going to do here, and I'll kind of walk us through them. But all three of these questions deal with these values that are listed here. So these 5 values, right? So I'll kind of go through the 5 of those, and then all 3 of these questions basically ask the same thing. Just basically, which value does this question asking us about or dealing with? So number 1 is citizenship. So citizens should be well informed about and participate in the government. So going back to when we talked about your rights and responsibilities when it comes to being a citizen. 2, work ethic. People should have an equal chance to be successful through hard work and determination. 3, tolerance. People should accept a wide variety of people, views, and traditions. 4, justice. People should be treated equally before the law. And 5, compassion. People should show sympathy for and want to alleviate distress. So let's look at these 3 questions and kind of answer them as we go. And as always, I encourage you to submit your questions in the chat so I can kind of see what you're thinking. And if you don't want to do that, that's perfectly okay. I want to put it out there that that's there if you do want to do that. So number 5 says, some governments set up constitutions that protect people's lives, liberty, and property. Which cultural value is protected when the Constitution protects the rights of a person accused of a crime? Again, it's going to be the same 5 options for all 3 of these questions: citizenship, work ethic, tolerance, justice, compassion. So again, it's talking about, the question specifically here is talking about the Constitution protecting the rights of people accused of a crime. So does that seem to fit citizenship, work ethic, tolerance, or justice? If somebody wants to be bold and try to answer in the chat, go for it. If not, I'll give it out here in just a second. And the one that seems to fit the most in my mind would be justice, right? People should be treated equally before the law. Let's look at number 6. So again, if you're just joining us, we're kind of running through some GED old social studies questions off of the old GED test, and we're specifically kind of reviewing and looking at questions that deal with civics and government, since that's what we've been talking about the last couple weeks. So number 6 says that the Quakers came to North America seeking religious freedom. Unlike some groups, they respected people who chose to practice other religions within the community. According to the definitions, which cultural value does this experience? So are the Quakers respecting people's right to practice other religions? That demonstrates citizenship, work ethic, tolerance, justice, or compassion. So I'd say safely we can probably rule out justice, because first of all, the last question answer was justice. So chances are they're not going to have you giving the same answer twice. So things like that are good to think about if you get a series of questions like this on the test. Who knows, you might. So between citizenship, work ethic, tolerance, and compassion, what do we think? To me, the two closest ones that seem to maybe potentially be correct or might be the right answer would be tolerance or compassion. Citizenship and work ethic don't really seem to apply. So between tolerance and compassion, let's look at them a little bit closer and see which one seems maybe to be the best. 3 says, we're going off of tolerance, people should accept a wide variety of people's views and traditions. Or 5, compassion, people should show sympathy for and want to alleviate the distress of others. So even though they both are similar in some regards, I think based on the fact that they specifically say that they respected people's rights to practice other religions, that's more tolerance than compassion. So tolerance would be the correct answer. And then lastly, number 7. Number 7 says, when people read newspaper stories about national laws, lobby the state legislature, and vote in local elections, they are practicing what? Cultural values. So we've talked a lot about participating in government over the last couple of weeks. That fall under citizenship, work ethic, tolerance, justice, and compassion. Again, here I would safely rule out tolerance, justice, and compassion. It seems to either be citizenship or work ethic. And if you go back, read the paragraph, the one that seems to match up at least the most in my mind would be, for 1, citizen. Right? Citizens should be well informed about and participate in the government. So it's as easy as that. So these are, more straightforward questions. You might see something, I would expect harder questions than these. These are on the easier side, but there's an example of some civics and government related questions that you might see on the test. Okay, so let me move on. Let's look at next one. And if you can't see any of this or hear clearly, please let me know. And I will do my very best to try to improve. All right, so let's look at this political cartoon. They love to give you at least 1 or 2 political cartoons on the real GED test. So expect to see something. Okay. So picture here is of some kind of lion or whatever the animal is, right? And the 3 aliens are coming down to Earth. And the lion or the animal on the left is saying, do you want my leader at the local, county, state, or federal level? So kind of a play off of the old, like, alien, take me to your leader thing. So the lion's implying, well, I don't know, what leader do you want me to take you to? Do you want me to take you to the local leader, the county leader, the state leader, or the federal leader, or the national nation? So the question for number 8 asks, what aspect of political society in the United States is the U.S. government? 1, attempt to deal with immigration laws. 2, complex organization of political power in the federal system. 3, constitutional separation of church and state. 4, constitutional power of checks and balances. Or 5, centralized powers to deal with civil rights. As usual, they throw out a lot of big words to try to make it seem more difficult than it really is. It's really a straightforward question. But we got to kind of weed through some of the confusion first in order to hopefully get to the right answer. If the right answer is obvious to you, then just go ahead and answer it and tune me out as I kind of over-explain all this. But when we go through these practice questions, I really like to try to break it down to really minute detail so that you can kind of see what I'm thinking and also maybe use some of this logic when you're taking these tests. Okay. So as always, I always look, unless the answer just jumps right out at me, I always just look to see what stands out as just being totally wrong, not making any sense. So, number one, attempt to deal with immigration laws. I don't think a cartoon with aliens is really trying to get at any sort of immigration law issue, right? And especially not anything that they are saying or doing makes me. So number one would be probably the first thing I'd throw out. Number three, constitutional separation of church and state. I don't see any mention of churches or religion, so I'd throw that one out also. And then I'd probably throw out number five, centralized powers to deal with civil crisis. Nothing in there about a crisis or any kind of problem or issue in that regards. So those three kind of stand out to me as being particularly wrong, or just not, they don't pertain to the question. They don't stand out as maybe being the correct answer. But what is left is number two, complex organization of political power in a federal system, or constitutional power of checks and balances. So I've ruled out those three without even really thinking about whether I understand the two that are left. Right? I've just gotten that far by process of elimination. So even if you don't quite get what 2 and what 4 are talking about, hopefully, when you're taking a test, you can eliminate some obvious wrong answers as well, so that if you do have to make a guess, at least you're making a guess between answers you think might be right. And just all I'm trying to get you to do is essentially, if you get to questions that you don't know the answer to, make a strategic guess. Give yourself the best chance to get it right. That's really what it comes down to. Because although I want you to learn stuff, learn social studies stuff, ultimately we're trying to practice taking a test, right? So good test-taking skills and good logic when it comes to guessing or trying to figure out answers to questions you might not know, that's the kind of stuff that's the difference between barely failing the test and passing. And our goal here is to get you to take it once and be done with it. We don't want you to go and miss by it. Okay? So pardon my tangent there, but let's go back to the question here and look at these two options. 2, complex organization of political power in a federal system, or 4, constitutional power of checks and balances. So in the end here, what makes the most sense to me would be number 2, complex organization of political power in a federal system. Remember, when we talked about a federal system of government, that means a shared power. So when we talked about levels and branches of the government last week, we talked about a federal or a national level, and then state governments, and then city and county governments. That's what this is getting, right? Is that even though a federal system is designed to be very efficient and help represent people in as accurate a way as possible, it also makes for confusion because there's lots of various levels. It's not as cut and dry as something where there's just one centralized government running everything. So again, that's what number 8's getting. All right, I won't spend that much time on every question. Let me skip down stuff and go to the next government-related question over here, number 13. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so let's look at 13. And again, if you want to read it by yourself and kind of answer it on your own, feel free to mute me and kind of read through it. But for people who either can't read it or are just kind of listening, I'll go ahead and read the question here. So number 13 says, James Madison became convinced that adding the Bill of Rights to the U.S. Constitution would help speed ratification of the Constitution by providing additional security for the rights of the people. Ratification means approval, right? Would speed its passing. In 1789, Madison was elected to Congress. As part of the process of getting approval for the Constitution, he promptly introduced a bill with 12 amendments. 10 became part of the new Constitution in 1789. So according to this information, what was James Madison's main reason for proposing that Congress approve the Bill of Rights? 1, he favored unlimited national power. 2, he wanted to follow British ideas. 3, he thought that his political career would be helped. 4, he wanted to set an example for other nations. 5, he hoped to gain support in the new U.S. government. So, again, if we're looking at these options, 1 and 2 I would throw out right away, right? Just by the way that they're worded. He favored unlimited national power. Either we know or we hopefully know, right? The United States government wasn't set up in favor of unlimited power or even a very powerful government, because we were rebelling from England, which had a very powerful king and a very powerful government. And we didn't want that. That was the whole purpose of us rebelling against England, right? So definitely wasn't number 1. Definitely wasn't number 2, because again, the British were the people that we were rebelling against and were revolting and basically leaving the British. So we didn't want to follow their ideas. We wanted to create our own ideas. So 1 and 2 I would throw out right away. So 3, 4, and 5, he thought that his political career would be helped. Now, knowing politicians, that probably entered his mind. I mean, I would think, right? But chances are that's probably not the right answer to this question. So between 4 and 5, he wanted to set an example for other nations. Or 5, he hoped to gain support in the U.S. So this is kind of a weird question in terms of the answer choices aren't great. First, I don't think that they're great options. But sometimes it's your job to just pick the best of what they give you, right? And we're not looking to pick our favorite answer. We're looking to pick the answer that GED testers think is the right answer. So it doesn't say anything in there about other nations or even talk about other nations at all. So I would just kind of, by picking the best of these 5, I would end up with number 5. He hopes to gain support for the new U.S. government. Sorry for my stammering. Let me move to the next question. And while I'm doing that, just a reminder to people that haven't been in most of my classes, this is just kind of a review of civics and government. So that's why we're kind of just rolling through all of these practice questions. We normally will just kind of spend part of the time going over stuff and talking about it. And then we only typically do practice questions at the end of class. But today and yesterday we've been doing a little bit more practice. So that's, you're wondering why we're just running through a bunch of questions. A bit more. Hopefully you can see this. And if not, I'll try to do my best to illustrate what we're looking at here. So again, another political cartoon. I'd love to give you these. So the picture is on the left-hand side. There's a picture of a wasteland. Looters world, no humans left. On the right side, there's a forest with a sign that says environmentalist world, no humans allowed. Okay? And then the little bubble down on the bottom says, why can't we have a happy meeting? Right? I think that's pretty straightforward of kind of the picture that they're painting and the cartoonist's point of view, right? So the cartoonist is obviously someone in between those two stances. They're using those pictures as an exaggeration to prove their point. So, to show their opinion. So number 16 is which statement best explains why the cartoonist presents the two different scenes. So it's very intentional, right? The cartoonist is meant to show this wasteland on one side and then a pristine forest on the other side where no humans are allowed, right? So it's obvious that he's trying to polarize both sides. So let's look at these 5 options before I end up giving away our answer. Number 1, to complicate a simple problem. 2, to support projects that pollute air and water. 3, to show that there is an easy solution to a problem. 4, to illustrate extreme differences of opinion. Or 5, to condemn environmentalists. So, as always, there's a couple that really stand out as obviously being okay. Probably he or she, probably not doing this to support projects that pollute air and water. Probably a safe assumption. The number 2 is wrong. Same thing with number 5. He's probably not doing this strictly to condemn environmentalists. So I'd throw out that one. Let's look at the other 3. Number 1, to complicate a simple problem. So-so, right? It's okay. Number 3, to show that there is an easy solution to a problem. There's nothing in here about proposing a solution to this issue. The cartoonist is just trying to shed light on the issue, not necessarily say there's an easy way, right? So it's probably not 3. And number 4, to illustrate extreme differences of opinion. Yeah, that to me stands out as being clearly right? The cartoonist is using these pictures to illustrate that on one side, you have people where they're not concerned about the environment at all, and they're ready to just burn it down. On the other side, you have people so concerned about the environment that they're not willing to take into account human needs and wants, right? So 4 is the right answer here. So let's look at a little more complicated one that takes a little more application. Number 17. Number 17. Number 17 says, and I'll zoom in a little bit more now that we've seen the cartoon. We know that the picture's up there, so let's take a look at this. So 17 says, lawmakers debated a proposed federal law that would stop logging in northwestern forest, the special habitat of the endangered spotted owl. Representatives of the timber company, the timber industry, protest that the law would put too many loggers out of work. Which decision regarding the debate with the cartoonist likely favor? So in other words, which of these options does it seem like this cartoonist would favor based on the opinion that they hold, right? Which we can tell is somewhere in the middle, right? Because the caption and the name of this picture is, why can't we have a happy medium? So this cartoonist is probably looking for some kind of compromise. So let's look and see which of these 5 options best kind of matches up with that. Okay. 1, ban the timber industry from most forests in the United States. 2, reserve sufficient habitat for the owl and permit logging in other parts. 3, allow unrestricted logging in northwestern forests and relocate the owl. 4, take no action. 5, protect the logger's job at any cost. So, right away, because we know the author isn't an all or nothing type of person, or the cartoonist. We know that they're not way on one side or the other. So, all the extreme measures aren't something that this author or this cartoonist is going to favor. Okay? So, number 3, allow unrestricted logging in northwestern forests. That doesn't sound like something this author would recommend. So, throw that out. Take no action. Well, the cartoonist obviously cares enough about the issue to make a cartoon about it and to publish it so that people see it. So taking no action is probably not going to be the right answer either. And number 5, protect the loggers' jobs at all costs, or at any cost. That's, again, a very extreme side of this argument. And so this cartoonist probably isn't going to support that either. So it's really down to 1 or 2. Ban the timber industry from most forests in the United States. Or 2, reserve sufficient habitat for the owl and permit logging in other parts. What sounds like the most middle ground of those 2 options? Right? Reserve sufficient habitat for the owl. So when we break it down like that, sometimes the right answer seems obvious, but again, just get in the habit of when you see a question, right away start breaking it down into which answer choices you think might be right, which ones can you get rid of right away. And you can do it fast. You don't need to waste all this time that we're doing. We're obviously going through this a lot slower than you would on on that note, just keep in mind, like I've said before, the biggest thing with the social studies test is time. Time is the biggest challenge, I think, for people on the social studies, because that's the thing I hear most is I ran out of time. Content isn't difficult. You can do it. All of you can do it. It's just a matter of, can you budget your time accordingly and make sure you get through all the questions on the let's do at least one more. Okay, I better find a good one. All right, I've got two more for us. So we're gonna skip 18 and go over here and do number 19. All right, so let's look at number 19. It says, one of the issues debated at the Constitutional Convention, the United States was creating the Constitution. One of the issues was whether or not states should be represented in Congress on the basis of equal representation. In other words, every state gets equal representatives, or proportional to the number of people who live in the state. If you were here last week, you know what we ended up coming up with, which was a compromise of both. Right? So today, our Congress has two bodies, the House of Representatives and the Senate, one of which is represented by population, the House of Representatives, and the Senate has equal representation. That was one of the big debates between all the original 13 states. It came time to create a government. There was an argument of every state should be represented equally, and people on the other side said no, states that have more people should be represented accordingly, and the two sides argued back and forth until finally they came to a compromise, right? But the question here asks, which state would have been most eager to support the concept of equal representation? Then they give you the state's name with their approximate population in the Constitution. We have Virginia with 700,000 people, Pennsylvania with 400,000 people, Delaware with 50,000 people, New York with 300,000 people, and Massachusetts with 450,000. So, of those states, which one would be the most behind having equal representation? In other words, which state would benefit the most from having equal representation? And really, it's just a matter of which state has drastically fewer people? Delaware. So that's all it's getting at. It's wording it in a way that makes it maybe sound more complicated than it is, but it's just saying that the state with the least amount of people, and in this case, it's not even close, right? 50,000 compared to the next smallest on this list is 300,000. If they were to have representation by population, Delaware would have very few people and everyone else would have a lot more. States like Delaware, or other states that were very small, comparatively, really wanted equal representation because they didn't want to get overridden by all these other bigger states. Last one worth doing or not? I had one more on my list. Yeah, just because it's a map one. Let's just do this one really quickly and then we'll call it. So this quite good. So the title for this is U.S. Presidential Election Results in 1856 and 1860. Scroll down here. And let's just do this one real fast. So 24 goes over this map. And it's a map of kind of who voted for who in both of these elections. The purple are Democrats and the yellow is Republicans. Okay? So 24 asks, which conclusion about the presidential elections can be drawn by comparing the maps of 1856 and 1860? So looking at the two different years, what conclusion can we make? One, in both elections, Democratic votes were confined to plantation states in the South, Were there other states that voted Democrat in both? Yeah, so one isn't right because I can see in 1856, California voted Democrat, and that's not a southern plantation state. So one, out. Two, in both elections, Republican votes confined to northern industrial states. Again, not true because in 1860, Oregon and California voted Republican. So that, again, is disproved by the map and is throw out also. 3, the Republican Party's popularity increased in different regions by 1860. Okay. Republicans are yellow here, and Republicans are yellow here. That looks like maybe the right answer. Let's make sure that the other two aren't, one of them isn't better. 4, the third party vote was more important in the election of 1856 than in 1860. Remember, the third parties are all of the other parties. So our country has the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and all the other parties are lumped together into what we call the third. Really small. And no, we can see that that's not true because in 1860, actually, there were some states that did vote for third party presidential candidates, and so 4 is false. And 5, the Western territories favored the Union over secession. That may or may not have been true, but based on the information in this map, that's not something we can know. So, sorry, I ran a few minutes over there and kind of rushed through that last question. If anybody does have any questions, though, I can stick around. Otherwise, I'll let you go so you have some time to have a break before any of you are doing a reading class. So hopefully that was somewhat helpful. I haven't decided where exactly we're going to go from here, but we will be on to a totally new topic on Monday, and I'll have a new set of information for us, and hopefully the class is going. So that's it for me. Thank you, guys. I will see you again either in science this afternoon or Monday for social studies. So have a good weekend if I don't see you, and that's it for me.